Now, many aspiring data analysts think that building dashboards is about making them look impressive. More charts, more colors, more complexity, but this is actually the fastest way to look inexperienced. Hiring managers are looking for data analysts who know how to build dashboards that actually drive decisions, and this is one of the biggest things that portfolio projects tend to get wrong. So today's video is episode 7 of our Portfolio Playbook series, where I'm going to be walking you through the DASH framework, which is going to enable you to build design-forward dashboards that are genuinely useful to stakeholders. And then I'm going to do a live demo where I build a dashboard on our Gamezone dataset from this playbook series so you can see it all in action. If you want to impress stakeholders and hiring managers and you want to build dashboards like an experienced analyst, then make sure you watch to the end. If you're new here, I'm Christine. I'm a former data director and a hiring manager who now helps people take the most direct path to working a job in data by learning how to think, speak, and operate like the top 1% of analysts out there. Let's dive in. Now, most of the dashboards I see in portfolio projects look something like this. They're colorful, they're crowded, there's tons of charts, but that actually signals to a hiring manager that you haven't yet worked in a realistic analyst environment where you're delivering these dashboards to stakeholders. So to overcome this, we're going to use a simple framework called DASH. It stands for Design, Audience, Signal, and Hierarchy. If you get these 4 things right, every dashboard design decision will become so much easier. You're going to know what charts to choose, what order to put them in, and what to emphasize and what to leave in the background. When we go through the demo later, I'm going to call out how every part of my thought process relates back to this framework so you can learn this thinking in real time. And if you're ready to take your portfolio projects and your job hunt strategy to the next level and work directly with me in a community that is going to motivate you and inspire you to land that job, then check out my mentorship program below. We've just opened spots for the next cohort so that you can land your next data job in 6 months or less. Now, when it comes to decision, you don't want to start with questions like what looks impressive or what can Tableau do? That usually results in bad framing, like here's a look at our overall sales performance with some nice charts. And that results in having lots of visualizations with no clear takeaway. Instead, you want to start with the decision that this dashboard will actually influence. So for example, what action might change after seeing this dashboard? Who's going to be accountable for these decisions? And how often does this decision need to be made? So good framing sounds like this dashboard helps the head of growth make budget allocation decisions every single month. This then already starts to inform the level of detail that you need to include in your dashboard by knowing who it's for, and also knowing the time grain that's important to the dashboard by knowing it's being used for monthly decisions. So some practical examples would be a marketing dashboard that helps make campaign budgeting decisions every single week, or a product dashboard that helps make inventory or roadmap prioritization decisions for the product team, or an HR ops dashboard, which helps the HR team make staffing or capacity planning decisions. Just remember that if you can't clearly state the decision, then the dashboard is probably going to end up being more decorative than useful. Now, when it comes to audience, this is where you're asking yourself, who's actually going to be using this dashboard and what level of detail do they care about? Just remember that the same data looks very different to different kinds of people. So if you're working with execs or a leadership team, they often want to see big picture stuff and they don't want to get too bogged down in the numbers. So this means that you might have more big picture callouts or high level trend visualizations. Whereas someone who is in the middle of the technical gradient, so let's say a less technical stakeholder or maybe a manager on a marketing team, they often want to see a mix of the trends and also have the ability to dig into the numbers that they want to. So you might have a balance of some charts as well as some tables. And then lastly, for individual contributors or people who are very technical, so maybe even other data analysts, they often want to be able to explore the data on their own. So you might have more filters or more dimensional breakdowns so that these people can slice and dice the data the way that they want to. A tip for your portfolio is to explicitly state who this dashboard is actually for. So you might say something like, this dashboard is for the product team so they can make monthly inventory decisions. The key takeaway here is that great dashboards are audience aware, not one size fits all. Now, signal is where you're asking yourself, what are the top 3 to 5 metrics that actually matter? Just remember that more metrics does not mean more insight. When you pick the top 3 to 5 metrics that matter for this decision and this audience, you're actually helping your stakeholders isolate what's most important and showing hiring managers that you have this skill. As a really practical example, let's say that we're trying to look at total sales trends for a product team. Well, you probably want to prioritize metrics like total sales, refunds, average order value, and order count, and slice that by things like product, region, and country. These are things that the product team can actually impact. And you would probably not want to look at operational metrics like time to ship or time to deliver, or marketing metrics like total page views or traffic, because it's not relevant to this decision and this team. In a work context, picking what these metrics are is usually something that you would do during the requirements phase of a project, where you're working with the stakeholder to agree on what these numbers should should be. But in a portfolio project, this is where your domain knowledge can really help you stand out because it gives you some context in helping to pick what those 3 to 5 metrics should be. A key takeaway here is that strong dashboards actually reduce the noise and they make the most important metrics impossible to miss. So hierarchy is where you should be asking yourself, what should the viewer see first, second, and third? Just remember that dashboards are usually scanned first before they're really explored. And so you want to use color, placement, size to guide the viewer's eye to what's actually most important. Some practical rules of thumb here. Just remember that most of the time we're looking top to bottom, left to right. And so to help bring the story to life without being super overwhelming, you normally want to start by being most high level and then working your way down to more and more detailed visualizations. You also want to make sure to use color sparingly and intentionally. So only use color when it's actually meaningful. The goal is not to make your dashboard look like a rainbow or look like something that belongs in the Modern Museum of Art. So you can always ask yourself, if someone were to open my dashboard, would they be able to see the high-level story in the first 60 seconds? Now, on the actual job, you might walk through something like the DASH framework with a stakeholder and requirements gathering meeting, where you make sure that you're on the same page about what the decision is, and you also decide together the top 3 to 5 metrics, and maybe even mock up what the hierarchy of the dashboard looks like. In a portfolio project, you're trying to demonstrate that you understand this thought process. So let's dive into a demo. We're going to see exactly how this thought process comes to life. Up until this point in our portfolio playbook series, we have cleaned the data, we've explored the data, we found some initial insights as well as some deep dive findings, and we've even formed some initial recommendations for our stakeholders. Now, let's say we delivered these results to the product team and they came back to us and said, this is great, thank you so much. Can you now actually help us build a dashboard that is going to help inform our product and regional stocking decisions on a monthly basis? Now, before I build anything, here's how I would go through the actual DASH framework. The decision is around product and regional inventory on the monthly level. The audience is the product and inventory management team. So they're people who are not super technical. They want to see the high level trends, but they also want to see the numbers and get more detailed if they want to. So for that means that I probably have a mix of charts and graphs, and I also want to have some tables so that they can see the actual values. For Signal, we know that we're looking at overall sales performance. So that already tells me that the top metrics I care about are things like sales, average order value, refunds, and order count. And I'm also going to slice by our 2 most important dimensions, which are product and the region. For hierarchy, because my audience is someone who isn't super technical, I'm already thinking that I'm going to have some high-level callouts at the very top so that they can see the performance across all of the metrics. And then as I move through the dashboard, I'm going to get more and more detailed. So I'm going to start high level with some overall trends and simple graphs, and then I'm going to give them the ability to actually dig into things further by having more detailed graphs at the bottom. There's a sample of this Gamezone dataset for you to download below. It has about 20K records in it. And for those of you guys who made it this far in the Portfolio Playbook series, I've actually added a bonus column of refunds so that you can also include that metric in your dashboard. Now, you can totally watch this video on its own if you're just focused on building dashboards right now. But if you do want to build a job-ready portfolio project, then make sure to revisit the beginning of this Portfolio Playbook series so that you see the end-to-end system of this portfolio project. So here I have the total dollars by product. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have in my dashboard a section that is focused on all sales metrics and then a section that is focused on refunds. So I'm already thinking to myself, I'll use this line graph for sales by product. I want to also show a line graph of refund by product. And so I could duplicate this page and copy it and then change it to just looking at refunds by product. Before I do that, this is a pro tip. Before duplicating your worksheets, make sure to format them how you want them to be formatted so that when you duplicate it, you've already brought that formatting over and you don't have to do it again. So I know that these line graphs are giving me a sense of the overall trends of the values of sales and refunds over time. When I'm thinking about what else would be helpful to the product and inventory teams, I also think that it would be helpful to see for sales and refunds, what proportion of sales were made up by each of the different products. and for refunds. So for total refunds, what proportion of the total refund count were made up by certain products? I'm going to show you how this all comes together to tell a pretty interesting story in a second. So let's take sales by product and build an area graph that shows this distribution over time. So now that I have this area graph, what this tells me is that the gaming monitor makes up the proportion of most of the total sales, and then the next closest ones are the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox Series. Now your data might look a little bit different because we have some extra products in there for you to play around with, but that's what this area graph is telling me. Now I'm going to rename the sheet because instead of looking at sales by product, what this is actually looking at is sales mix by product. Mix is a really common term that we use in industry to basically explain the fact that we're looking at the distribution of this dimension over this certain metric. So the combination of these two charts is super powerful. While the line chart tells me the trend of the absolute values over time, so for example, I can see how much the PlayStation was, how much the gaming monitor was, I can see different spikes in values. Combining it with the mix graph then tells me how the overall distribution of these products changed over time as well. So for example, we can see all of these ups and downs. When all the lines go down, I want to understand, was this evenly distributed across all of our products, or was there one product that was actually going down the most and maybe driving down this revenue a lot? So for example, at the end of 2022, I can see that all of these products are going down, but when I look at towards the end of 2022, I can see it's pretty evenly distributed across all of the products, which points to something macro happening that might not be specific to any one product or specific to this company. So that's why I like to combine the line graph and mix graph. It's something we see at work all the time. Now that we have these overall trends, remember that we were thinking about our audience, right? These are product and inventory managers who want to see the high level insights, but they probably also want to see the actual values. And there's no better way to see the actual values than by using a table. So don't overlook the use of tables when it comes to your dashboards. These are really often used at work, especially for dashboards that are meant for reporting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table looking at the top sales metrics by product. Now going back to the signal part of Dash, the top sales metrics are metrics like sales, average order value, and total order count. So I'm going to create a table looking at those three metrics across all of these products. Okay, now I actually already have 6 visualizations. So I have the 3 for the sales metrics and the 3 for the refunds metrics. This is the point at which I would actually start moving things to a dashboard so I can get a sense of what things start to look like in terms of the dashboard structure. And then I can start to see what else I want to start adding to this dashboard. So I'm going to pull these visualizations into a dashboard view. And the way that I'm going to think about it, now this ties back to hierarchy, the H part of Dash, is moving left to right. I'm going to start from more high-level trends and then get down into the more detailed numbers. So that means that for sales and refunds, I'm going to first have the line graph, then the area graph, and then the table. And then I'm also thinking about how people look at dashboards from top to bottom. So that means I'm gonna order it by what the most important metric is first. So I'm gonna put sales on the top, and then I'm gonna put refund on the bottom. So let's see what that looks like. So putting these pieces together, I can see that my line charts are starting to tell what the trend of the numbers are. The sales mix is showing us how the distribution has changed over time. And then if I want to see what those actual values are, then I have the numbers over here. So this is already starting to look pretty good. Now, every dashboard usually has a title. We also often use filters so that we can actually, toggle through different dimensions and different segments throughout the dashboard. And in this case, because this is a dashboard for someone who is not super technical, a product or an inventory manager, I'm also going to add some callouts at the top so that I can call out what the values are of the most important metrics. Callouts are a really good way to just show those values at a glance so that if someone, for example, a high-level product manager, wanted to just come to this dashboard and just get a sense of, okay, what are the total sales that we've made so far in this year or on all time, then they could see those values really quickly. So let me go ahead and make those callouts. Then we're going to come back and add titles and add filters. Okay, so now I have callouts of the most important metrics, and you can already see how I've used size and bolding to make these stand out a little bit more. We're gonna do all the formatting and all the cleanup of this dashboard at the very end, so you can see how we make this look very pretty and make it look stakeholder ready. But for right now, in these callouts, there's also another thing that I would like to add. Notice that in this entire dashboard, we don't really see the total trend of total sales, average order value, and total orders. It's always broken out by a dimension like product. So what I'm going to do is in these callouts, I'm also going to add a very minimal line graph just as a reference point right under these callouts, and I'm going to make them like a gray color so that it doesn't stand out too much. It'll look something like a spark line if you're familiar with spark lines in Excel, where it's helpful to see what the overall total trend is. The other thing I want to mention about callouts is that most of the time we wouldn't really have a callout that shows total sales across all time, for example, the way that we've done here. Something that would be a little bit more helpful would be to show something like total sales for the most recent month, or showing the percent growth of total sales month over month. Just to keep it simple right now, I'm going to keep this at total sales and average order value across all time, but I do challenge you to try something like that in your dashboards to make it even more helpful because you've brought in that context. So for right now, let me go add those more minimal line graphs just as spark lines and reference points so that we see the highest level trends for total sales, AOV, and order, and then we see them broken out by sales by product and refunds by product. I'm going to make a stacked bar graph where I look at the total sales by the region, where the total bar shows all sales and then it's broken up to the different regional chunks. And this is something that I could have drawn up in a mock-up first, or I could have discussed with the stakeholder to make sure we're all on the same page. So let's go ahead and do that so we see what that looks like. So you can see now back in the dashboard, by using gray, I've made it so that there's not too many colors in the dashboard, but there's still a very clear distinction between the regions. Okay, now this stuff is more generally readable on my dashboard, so I'm going to add in a last section, which is our filters. To do that, in one of the main worksheets, I'm going to pull in the filters that I want, and then I'm going to, in the dashboard view, then bring these filters to the surface, and I'm going to make the settings so that each of the filters are actually operating on all of the visualizations, so that even though I pulled in that filter from that one page of sales by product, when I use that filter, it then applies to the entire dashboard. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so now looking at this dashboard, things look okay, but there's still a lot of noise happening over here. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to clean your dashboards up so they actually look stakeholder ready. Okay, so now I've added my filters in, I formatted them so they look a little bit more nice, and I'm now at the callout section. I'm thinking to myself, because these are really important numbers, I kind of wanted to make them pop a little bit more. So this is where I could use color, let's say maybe like a bright blue, to just make them stand out, because right now there seems to be a lot of block text on the screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and format these callouts so that they stand out a little bit more. And this dashboard is actually what I would consider to be stakeholder ready. Now, some things that might stand out to you about this kind of dashboard is how functional and how simple it looks. Notice that we only used 3 to 4 different kinds of visualizations, and we didn't use that many color schemes. We used monochromatic and gray color schemes to make certain things sit in the background. And this dashboard does not really look like what you see on Tableau Public. The Tableau Public dashboards and visualizations are more so a gallery of some of the most beautiful things that you can make in Tableau, but they don't actually represent what we show at work. So the finishing touches on this dashboard would be things like making sure that all the filters then carry through to all of the visualizations so that we can actually use these filters throughout the entire dashboard, and then maybe to do a little bit of resizing so that each of the visualizations and their axes and their labels are all very clearly readable. Now the next step would be to upload this dashboard once it's done to Tableau Public so that people can actually view it online and interact with it. So we do that just by doing Control Save in Tableau Public Desktop, and then when I upload it, it looks something like this, so we can see it a little bit more easily. And then I would actually screenshot this and actually add it to my portfolio project and link to my Tableau Public profile in the project. Here's an example from one of my students where he added his dashboard and then said to explore more trends using the interactive Tableau workflow, workbook, you can find it here. Now, in the next video of our Portfolio Playbook series, I'm gonna show you how to tie all of this together in an impressive write-up in GitHub, and then we're also gonna dive into data presentations so that you know exactly how to speak like a real data analyst on the job and in interviews. If that sounds helpful to you, let me know in the comments below. And if you're ready to take your portfolio projects and your job hunt strategy to the next level and work directly with me in a community that is going to motivate you and inspire you to land that job, then check out my mentorship program below. We've just opened spots for the next cohort so that you can land your next data job in 6 months or less. That's it for this video. I will see you guys in the next one.